literally joke about like German personality is so bureaucratic and so authoritarian that the reason that they've never had a German revolution is because the peasants couldn't afford the train fare. And they would never dream of taking the train without paying. And they would literally warn us about this as exchange students. They were like, you Americans, like there's no turnstiles, there's no nothing. You just are expected to pay for your train ticket. And every once in a while, a person will come down checking tickets. And if you don't have one, they will throw you off at the next stop. And you will see every German person just looking at you with utter disdain. And literally we were in this little sleepy little college town. And it was like the light wasn't red, but there was nothing there. And I went to cross the street and like all 5 of the Germans with me like gasped and held me back because how could you walk when it doesn't say walk? And this is to say American culture and German culture are very different. And there are 340 million of us. If we took to the streets, if we stopped paying taxes, if we stopped shopping, there are many different kinds of things floating around. And I also just love to remind people right now that like martial law in America is not tenable. And I keep hearing people talking about closing the borders. They can't. That's why we have a problem with illegal immigration. There are many thousands of miles of borders. But it's also kind of scary because who is the leadership leading the opposition to this right now? Good morning. So if you ordered them last week, I'm probably taking... I like this idea too, right? Take a page from Scandinavian women and strike and stop doing everything. But again, I think the problem is who is leading these movements? How is this going to turn out? But also, I want to remind people that like his number one goal is to be in the media all of the time, right? So like shock and awe and exhausting us right now is part of the goal. And the fact that we feel so tired 5 days in, like that's part of the goal. You're going to set a bunch of things in place in the first 100 days. And then it's just going to be, I hope and think, like the season of grift and gulf and the broligarchy. But, and like, I'm scared. I think he's going to punch so many holes in this ship of our nation. I don't think he's going to be able to sink it. But lack of organized resistance is concerning, and this is part of the problem with the capitalism and the just culture. But also, again, I remind us that like the cultures of nations where this stuff has happened matters too, right? So I grew up in Brazil, just recovering from its dictator era, and I was in Buenos Aires when COVID shutdown started happening. Me and Mr. Knitting Cult Lady and Knitting Cult Baby, we were on the last flight out of Buenos Aires as the military was marching down the streets telling people to stay in their homes. And you know what? Other than Brazil, because Bolsonaro was a Trump fanboy, every Latin American country did very well handling COVID. Because when in Latin America countries, when the military tells you to stay in your house, you stay in your house, right? Different personalities. Look, there's stuff that is scary. I think people saying like they're going to go after Americans born abroad is we're spinning up too quickly. But also, I'm an American born abroad who would be stateless, in fact, if that happened. I don't think we're there yet, but it would be interesting. Oh, I am complaining about capitalism. I think capitalism is one of the huge cult systems we're all in. And like every cult, it harms the individual. But don't worry, I think I'm already on a list. However, they love to underestimate me. I would love to be a fly on the wall of the federal agent who's assigned to watch the enemy within who calls herself knitting cult lady. And how seriously he would not take that job. It would be fun for me. Cool way to spell Brittany. So now you get an emboss. So here we are to sign 346 copies of this book. I only have 340 copies, so. We're not rounding up LGBTQ yet. There is scary stuff going on with passports. Also, you should have your passport. This is one of the Americanisms that I'll never understand, is the culture of not having your passport. And people are like, well, it's expensive, that's privilege. And I'm like, okay, so let's have that conversation about how it's prohibitively expensive to own this document that is like fundamental to you moving around in the world. But like, as an American born abroad, it's just so crazy to me. Like when I found out that most Americans had never had their passports, I just like, I literally couldn't even compute. Same way I felt the first time I was in my friend Danielle's house and she was talking about this is the room my parents brought me home from the hospital in. And her dad had been born and raised in that house. And I just could like, I'm still just now getting to be 5 years being the longest place I've lived somewhere. And it just blew my mind. I like having those kinds of roots. And also, why is TK clowning with us? I really thought I was going to wake up today to have debutation. There's a way to resist the capitalist grind is to sleep. It can also be a sign of depression, so, you have to balance. Go away, winter boots. Nobody wants to talk to you, but is this why am I being flooded with winter boots, people? Okay, I better unpin the book. Try to do it without a violation today. Probably will not succeed. Also, I have to buy rollerblades. Because now, knitting cult baby, who is 9, still willing to skate about with me, holding hands. And so, I suppose, this is part of Brazilian culture that I shall be passing down. What is winter boots code for? suppose I should be blocking people. I'm getting very inundated with Boots comments. Hi, LBS. Yep. That's a big one that, like, finally, now that the cult scholars are running cult information instead of religious leaders and religious scholars running cult information, we are finally all agreed that, like, Mormonism is a cult. And I, in fact, have an ever-growing number of groups. So it's like Mormonism, Catholicism, the Army, all branches, Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witness, like Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, go define cult however you want. I have this convenient definition that I've finished writing a book about. But pick any definition you like, and it will apply. There's a reason that every cult scholar ever has been asked to give the military and AA their cult exemptions. I'm the one that do not do it. Okay, I'm going to tell you one thing about your codes. The only way to fight the spy network is going to be off of technology. We are very, very, very good at intelligence in this country. Cult exemption is what I call the fact that every single cult educated person has been like, the enemy is the military a cult? And they either, because that literally, as soon as you define cult, it's like, okay, so military, and also, in my opinion, okay, so AA. These two, almost everyone has been asked about, and almost nobody touches AA. And then everyone from military, they go either, yes, it's a cult, but we have to have it, or no, it's not a cult, and here's why. The name of my book that I'm signing right now is Uncultured. It's my memoir of growing up in the Children of God cult and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army. Okay, so what happens, and even in one of the cult textbooks, Cults in Our Midst, Margaret Singer, who's like the godmotheress of cult studies, has her 19 reasons why the Marine Corps isn't a cult that she felt very strongly about. And the interesting thing, which this is how it's supposed to work, we build knowledge on each other. I only know what I know about cults because of her and other scholars' work in this field. But also this whole time we've been waiting for someone with military experience who knew as much about cults as Singer and Lalich to also say, no, it's validly a cult. And someone asked me something interesting because they were like, I see you call the Army a cult, but you're also saying that it's not going to be devoted or driven by Trump. And I'm like, yeah, because the Army's cult leader, the military's cult leader is an idea. The leader of the cult can be a person or an idea, often still through like a dead person, but the military's cult leader is the Constitution, not the living president. This is called charisma by proxy. Any president is a charismatic leader because we have given them authority over that, and the authority comes through the Constitution. And the military is pledged to the Constitution. I do not think cults are good because I do not think coercion and manipulation can be done for good. And I'm just like, I'm explaining this in the book because I'm like come up with my own definition of cult. Why? First of all, I don't think there's been an organizational psychologist who's done it yet. There's been psychologists and sociologists. I'm an organizational psychologist. But second of all, I grew up in a cult. So I've read all of their definitions, and then I needed to create my own that I felt was more inclusive. I need to get a charger. And so everyone wants me to comfort them. And even today, someone was like, oh, so there's no silver lining in what I'm talking about in America. I'm like, no, he's trying to be a dictator. He's like, there's no silver lining. I'm like, I'm the threat person, not the morale person. Something I say in my second memoir, Uncultured, which is available as a video book on my Patreon, when I basically brief the battalion that like, hey, y'all, we're going over to this place where we're probably going to lose because it's called the Graveyard of Empires. And then this major comes up and tries to get mad at me. And I'm like, he's like, what do you think this does to morale? I'm like, with all due respect, sir, I'm the intelligence officer, not the chaplain. It's not my colored hair or that you're worthless. It's that you're here commenting and making me money. Much appreciated with my unmaintained hair, which is not for you. Imagine that. Having colored hair of any sort that is not natural is like the best way to ensure that you go viral every single day right now. These bros are making me mucho in dinero because they just can't stop themselves from stopping by to comment on a member of the knitting blue-haired cult. Of course, I'm their worst fear. Basket weaving, arts, degree holding, former U.S. Army captain. Damn right. Put Victoria's book inside of John's envelope. And now, how dare I? There is an audiobook. It's called Uncultured. I read it myself. Hardest thing I've ever done in 5 days. It was right that I put Victoria book in John's envelope. I don't think we're in revolution yet, so I am very much on the grid and making my money on the grid and not complying in advance and not giving up my power and my voice. I'm just letting you know that your online codes will not work and will not keep you safe. I also don't think it's healthy to live in we're in revolution mindset because that's not going to best equip us to fight back. Things like the fact that we have the internet now are things that are significantly different. Just don't think that you're getting things by the world's strongest spy network. It is on Hoopla. It is everywhere. It is, in fact, a major Macmillan book that just happened to come out in the fall of 2022 when no one was paying attention to Trump and everyone was paying attention to Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died, which came out 2 weeks earlier. But they promised me it was what they call a word of mouth book. And then they gave me a very good book as a product. And selling my own book from the virtual street corner is exactly what I was made for. Literally. So here I go. Yeah, this is exactly important because nothing has actually changed for the majority of people. What we need to be doing now is getting ready, not panicking about them closing flights. I think there are quite a lot of things that nobody will let him do because it would destabilize America internationally. And that is being surveilled and assessed all of the time, 24 hours a day, all of the time. Like all these things that you're all are implying, like you could just get rid of all generals and admirals and everyone who's not a loyalist. If you got rid of 45% of the United States military, you would put our country at extreme risk in the international community, and nobody's going to let you do that. They're absolutely going to let him be a strongman oligarch and like take off with America because the adult politicians aren't doing anything to stop him. And it's not the military's job or the international security community's job. But I don't think they're going to let him destabilize America internationally. And I also remind you, no country in the world has an army large enough to invade and hold America or to police all of its borders, including our own. Part of why we did not win in Afghanistan was because we didn't have enough people to hold that area. And that area is quite small compared to us. I did write it. I am not Donald Trump. I do not sign books that I didn't write. It's called Uncultured. It's about growing up in the Children of God religious cult and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army. And after I predicted and then watched a cult leader win the first time, I decided to have something to say. But okay, like they're only allowing those who align with him to like, this is not how the military works. Like on purpose, our military is complex. It moves slowly. And there are about 1 billion safeguards so that a strongman president can't just walk off with the American military. And there has never been a successful modern coup without the support of the military, whether it was blooded or bloodless. There are a lot of safeguards, including the fact that he doesn't understand how our military works because he studies dictatorship militaries. Our military has been volunteer for many, many years. And ever since the end of World War II, our military and most modern militaries, not including Russia, have not operated under a do what I say or you're done. We have operated under a model called mission command, which ironically we took from the Germans, Auftragstaktik, which means that in a highly technological environment, which has been the military since World War II, we are no longer standing on a line with the general saying, fire, right? So we have to push everything down to the lowest level. And so I say to you, it's not generals and admirals that make the decisions that keep the military machine running most of the time. It's lieutenants and captains and sergeants, because that's the way our military runs. And he doesn't know this. I hope he lasts the 4 years because I think sociopath veteran Shady Vance will be even more dangerous. I feel reading and listening to this book at the same time would be like, recording it was one of the hardest things I've done in 5 days. And I think it would be a very hard listen and not to be able to like skim over some of the hard parts because it is basically every single trigger warning you've ever heard of. Jesus can buy a government agency if the American people are willing to sell it. Basically, that's why services are so awful. My local post office, hey, Ronte, is open from 11 to 4:30 with closed for a 1-hour lunch break because there's one guy that works there. He wants to be the first trillionaire, but also it's about information control and isolation, two things which cults heavily rely on. And yes, that is why the Heritage Foundation got Vance, who sold them his soul. And he is absolutely the worst kind of human, in my opinion. Connor, you get a fancy gold sticker. Nobody knows how to dismantle cults or to get people out of them. If it existed in the knowledge, I would be a very, very wealthy human. Silver sticker, sorry, Connor. If you don't want to give your money to the TikTok billionaires, there's a link in my bio and you can give your money to me directly. But then that pays the publishing companies and, you know, if you're participating in capitalism, you're supporting awful things. And Ford was a Nazi. However, if you are purchasing signed copies of Uncultured in any way, you are contributing to the self-publishing of the next book, Culting Up America, which I'm going to try so hard to put on the New York Times list as an indie book. It's going to be fun. And if you are so inclined, in the link in my bio, you too can invest in the publishing process, which is so long and expensive. But we're getting there. Right, there's no ethical capitalism. You know, it's interesting to be like deconstructing capitalism as a cult. And like, of course, the fact that I'm here selling these copies means I got them at a lower rate than I'm selling them at. But yeah, for some reason that I still do not understand, I was given 5 days to record Uncultured with no wiggle room. And I had to, you know, cult baby motto, do it with a broken heart and push myself through it. And then I felt I was under concrete for about 2 weeks. And I was lucky that my therapist at the time had told me, like, this is going to be really hard. Take 2 weeks off on your schedule. And I just have like repeating entries in my journal at the time where I'm like, today was really hard. And then the next day I'm like, today was really hard. All right. I think that was only 24 books. Oh. I do think businesses use familial language to keep you overpaid. I kind of just felt like all the science of motivation as it applied to organizational psychology was a lot of cult tactics. Because I feel like there's one thing to do if you want to motivate people: pay them money. You want them to be excited to work for your company. Give them Christmas bonuses. No, you can get this book anywhere you buy books. It is a major Macmillan book. I just happen to be the person that's the most successful at selling it. And it's, yeah, on audio. That's what I was talking about. It was very interesting because on the one hand, it was like nice and very healing to like be like, I wasn't a bad voice actress. The audio got the book listed in the New York Times twice. And so I was pretty proud of it, and like using the cult skills to read a book against them. And also the reality of it was like, so five days to record a 382 page book. And so the logistics of it was, I was up reading at 7 a.m. By 9, I think I was on a train going into the studio. Then I would 6 to 7 hours perform the book. And so like you have to read the part the night before that you're going to record the next day to like unlock it on your brain and in your tongue. And then go in and record it. And then get back on the train at 4:30, writing back in. Mr. Knitting Cult Lady would put food in front of me and I would eat. And then I would just kiss Knitting Cult Baby and go off to do more reading of this very, very intense story. And going through it twice in 5 days is not maybe what I would recommend to anyone. I never realized before I started signing a lot of books that there's a difference between Catherine and Catherine. And it scares me every single time. Military down the border is scary. It's also a legitimate use of the military to guard America's borders. Oh, purple hair warning. Vet Bro's not going to be able to stop himself from commenting. And when he comments, I get money. Me and my purple hair, laughing all the way to the bank, sir. Have a day. I knit too. And I have a liberal arts degree. And I make a lot of money and I know more things than you. And I probably have more military combat time in my little pinky than you do in your whole shrivelly little experience. Oh, it's fun for me. Taylor Swift once said about recording her albums that everyone should get to redo their 20s in their 30s, and publicly talking about my military experience is that. And I get to say all of the things to them that I didn't get to say then and profit from it. My favorite is when they come and try to be like, you're just exploiting your trauma. Yes. For the first time at 37 years old, Daniela is the only person exploiting Daniela. Cool thing about deconstructing your traumatic experiences is then they're all yours to use and talk about and monetize in any way you like. Vance is worse because Vance is a veteran and Vance understands the military. One of the safeties right now is that Donald Trump does not understand how the American military works, so it will be much harder for him to weaponize. Now, J.D. Vance was a low-ranking Marine, so many of military and leaders will disdain him anyways, but again, knowing the enemy is part of what makes you lethal, which is why all these bros and everyone else who comes at me doesn't win, because I've read my book and I know what I've been through and how badass I am. Martial law is not tenable in the United States. There is not a country on earth with an army large enough to occupy the United States. I do not believe you can even drive the U.S. military by force, much less the U.S. country. Again, as you are all studying the similarities, which I love it. I've been talking about similarities between Trump and Mustache Men since 2015. I love it that everyone's on board right now, but also study the differences. taking over a country in the early 19th century that had only been democratic for 14 years and taking over America are very different things. And those differences are significant because I don't think he's going for 1930s Germany. I think he's going for 1980 dictatorship Brazil. And that's much easier to achieve. This is why in intelligence, we talk about the most likely and the most dangerous. And the most likely is he has a lot of small arms rounds and a lot of things. And, you know, it takes down helicopters every single time, small arms fire, as well as other things. But also, just getting good shots in on a ship or a helicopter doesn't necessarily take it down. And that's part of it. Book recs. So the first thing I will say is come join my book club. We have that through the Matreon. And I do, so it's a $10 a month membership and it's 2 book clubs in the month. So it's like $5 a meeting. Drop in, drop out whenever you want. And we do a cult memoir book club. So we have 12 memoirs that we're reading, and then cult theory book club. We're reading some more theory books. So come join my book club. Obviously read or listen to Uncultured. And Educated is a good book that was the book that inspired me to actually write this one. I say actually write, because of course you think about writing books for decades before you actually do it. Or if you're Daniela and 24 and deployed to Afghanistan, you start and you write a really bad book proposal that you will get to laugh at later. But the book I was trying to write was called The Girl from Nowhere. And I did put that line in this book. And I'm so proud of myself for it. It was like a little gift to 24-year-old Daniela for everything she survived. So I think the military being a part of deportation is despicable. I also think it's a legitimate use of military powers, unfortunately. But also I'm fundamentally diametrically opposed. Like, I would not have pardoned January 6th people. I would have pardoned everyone who's ever in prison for a drug crime, at least at the federal level. Like, that's how far apart we are. So horrified. I was introduced to culture when I became a civilian in Seattle at the age of 30 years old. And it is just like wine culture anywhere else. Just walk in and go. And just the fact that people are still in prison in Washington State for this is just horrifying. Like, what? Anyway, didn't have a platform last time he got elected. So in the 8 years since, I wrote a major best-selling memoir that answers the question. I say I'm the blue JD Vance, right? Like, veteran post-Trump election that has a book saying, here's what happened to your family. His was, here's why angry white men voted for Trump. Mine is, your family's in a cult. Surprise! Oh yeah, so we were talking about books. So Educated is great for showing the like single family cult experience, like never uses the word cult. My book too uses the word cult very rarely. And I do what I call the power of the extreme story. It works with a lot of ex-Mormons. Like, you can say not a cult, not a cult, not a cult. But when you're relating to the childhood of the lady from one of the most extremely recognized cults on the planet, yes. No, Educated by Tara Westover. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. And then I'm Glad My Mom Died, Unalived by Jeanette McCurdy is excellent. Wait, also, your mom died? No, baby, not mine. That's the name of a book. Oh. Yeah. face was horrified. Gosh, there's so many. We're reading right now. Oh man, what are we reading in February? Yeah, that's the book we're reading right now in called Book Club, which you can get access to in the Matreon. Next month, we're reading A Billion Years by Mike Rinder, who just passed away, but he was high-level Scientology, so that's about as much as you'll ever see me get into Scientology. And then we keep going. So I love this question, are liberals in a cult? Because I have a test for this, okay? They're like, how do you know you're not the ones in a cult? Here's how I know. If I had my favorite Trump supporters in my power, okay, if they had me in their power for 2 weeks, say I was a child or say my leg is broken or something, and I have to go where they go and I have to do what they do, how many perspectives could they expose me to? And the answer to that is one perspective. If I had them for 2 weeks, I could expose them to at least 25. Yes, I have counted. Cults rely on isolation. So that's how I know. Thanks for the question. The left is actually really poor at culting right now. Some of those are for good reasons, which is that the Republican Party decided 50 years ago they were only going to speak to one person, the straight white man, Christian man. Okay? So they have one strong message. We are trying to give a different plan for every person. And unfortunately, that doesn't make a strong united message. So that we are not culting as well. I was happy because I thought with Kamala, like, had the energy to sort of lead a movement. I love when they think they've got these gotcha questions as though like I don't do this for a living every single day. Oh, men. It's like all the men that would come up to me in the army and be like, ma'am, it hurt me real bad to watch you pass me on the run today. Be like, Sergeant, you're running 8.5-minute miles. I'm running 5s. Like, we are not punching in the same weight class. Run along behind me. Also, nobody tells the boys that their orange tennis shoes look like pink when they're that far behind you. That's fun for me. But yeah, army culture is about to get much worse for women. I mean, they've already started getting rid of DUI. It already went out. It's gone. Not allowed to mention that in the army anymore, in the military. Hi. That's why you say married, not crushing. I told Mr. Knitting Cult Lady, like, you're on top of getting mama's ring topped off, right? Because like every day I sit here and knit in front of them. No one gets to see my awesome ring. Oh, it's fun. So I have not read Sociopath by Patrick Gagney, but we are doing in Cult Theory Book Club The Sociopath Next Door by Martha Stout. And I would always pick a book by a woman over a book by a man if I had a choice. So I made that decision when I was in organizational psychology, which of course all the books are written by straight white men. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm not voluntarily reading any more books by straight white men. And I have missed nothing. This is part of what is fueling all these hateful men right now is like, they know that patriarchy is ending. And like, unfortunately for straight white men, you were born in the wrong part of the timeline, because everyone does want you to just shh and sit down now and, take less of the pie from everyone else so that they can also get fed. I love it when people are like, they think that us having more of the pie means they have less. And I'm like, yeah, that's how pie works. The people that were hoarding the pie are having to share the pie, and they're mad because they wanted to just roll around in pie. We got to take their pie. And we are. And it's hard to put toothpaste back in the tube. Like, in theory, he can do it. Pete Hogsworth can do it. He can just say, you know what, women in combat roles, failed experiment. They're done. And again, that would really compromise the military, and I don't think any of the military adults in the room will let him do that. People have asked me what the military culture right now is for LGBTQIA. And as far as I've heard from reports, like, that's the thing that has changed the most. It is friendly, it is accepted, and we have large populations of them. Thoughts on Tulsi Gabbard is, a spy is running the intelligence agency. Just. How we get white women to vote in their interests is we have to get white women to realize that they hate us too. I heard this very important thing, that the only reason they tolerate us is because only a white woman can give birth to a white man. So, like, you get angry and disgusted about that, and then vote and realize that they hate you too. And I say this every time there's something bad in the news about military grape culture. Like, why are all the good men not screaming about this right now? Nope, you're thinking of Hegseth, not Vance, talking about women don't belong. I mean, Vance may have said it too. It's a very common toxic vet bro thing to say. But I have not heard of that. No. I haven't heard of anything particularly despicable regarding his military career yet. He just sold his soul to Satan for a chance at being president. So, you know. Yay! Yes, because it is all men. I agree. I put this on Threads and Blue Sky the other day. Just true statement. As I was at the VA, like, when I'm sitting next to a male veteran, my first thought is, I wonder how many people he has assaulted. Like, that's my first thought. That's not political. That's not what I want it to be. That's just what my thought is. That's what the numbers indicate. And, like, I'm married to a good veteran that I know has never assaulted anyone. But if other women saw him, other women veterans, they would be wondering, and they would be correct. And that is men's legacy. And I wrote that, and then, like, so many dudes called me a hater. And just like, and the fact that none of them on Threads thought to understand that I'm sitting in the VA because I'm a veteran too. And that's their legacy also. All of the men. Because if you weren't one of the ones assaulting people, what were you doing about the fact that your brothers were? And yes, I agree with you about J.D. Vance. He's dangerous because he is a sociopath, because he has no personality and he will just go wherever gives him the most power. And this is something I think sometimes people struggle to understand about cult leaders, is like, they just want to play games with people. They just want to play power games. And so it, you know, like, it doesn't matter that Elon and Trump have more money than they can ever spend in their lifetime. That's not what they care about anymore. They care about playing power games. I care about the fact that they will not last very long, because these narcissists all want the spotlight for themselves, and cult leaders can't have other leaders about destabilizing them and taking parts of their following. Like, I guarantee you that Trump is livid about the fact that the number one thing being talked about his inauguration is the Yahtzee salute. I guarantee you he is livid about that. Oh yeah, it is amazing how many people attack me. But the thing I realized, once you have something to sell, all publicity is good publicity. The more they underestimate me, the better. Not knowing your enemy is a great way to let them win. No, it's people that won you the election. So just, imagine existing and just welcoming fascism out loud. You're going to get what you want, though. The promise of the cult is always a lie. So y'all got what you wanted. We're all on this train now. And I know what it was like to live in a country recovering from a dictatorship. You don't, but I do. So you laugh now. Go right ahead. One of the hardest things when you leave the cult is having to go back to all the people you mocked and betrayed. So, while I give you all my sympathy for being manipulated into a cult, it's also going to be fun to watch you have to eat your words. I will enjoy it. Of course, it's a perfect way to promote a book. It's also a good book. I mean, objectively, it was in the New York Times twice, and Rolling Stone magazine published a chapter, something they rarely do anymore. You can read it just by Googling my name and Rolling Stone. That's another thing they can't understand. Cult members are so good at manipulative sales that they forget or don't know that non-manipulative sales exist. Like, yes, I am using all of my skills of charisma and influence to get you to buy my book. And then I will deliver you one good book that I believe will help you. And those are called consensual sales. Something else that the GOP doesn't know much about, consent. This is why they confuse popularity with being a cult leader. But they don't recognize an actual cult leader when he unalives someone on Fifth Avenue and tries to steal the country. Oh my God, I've been selling like one book every minute, y'all. I might actually just turn my books off after this live. Hey, B.
Yeah.
Did Daddy go out?
What?
He knows what I'm talking about. I think. The champagne for my champagne problems. Nobody is sympathetic when you're overwhelmed because you have too many books to sign. Harumph. But sure does make them vet bros cry and clutch their little man pearls. Oh, especially when I don't validate myself to them. What rank were you? Someone today actually who followed me, he was like, do you have a husband? And I'm like, since you follow me, I'm guessing that you're not a bro, but like, I'm not answering this question because it's bro-y.
That Rosen reference can go consume a satchel of Richards.
Oh, look, a warrant officer in the flesh. Wait, you got to come here behind me so you can see the the other one too, because I can't move the computer as much. They deserve to get to see a retired warrant officer. There's a rumor that I'm married to one.
Wait, was the computer or the iPad?
No.
Oh, computer. Here I is.
Here he is.
I'm wearing my Commander's adjacent gear today for all of you Washington fans up there.
He is supportive king. And it's so great because, of course, my first husband was the guy who, when I gave the valedictorian speech, told me that the salutatorian speech guy was funnier, right? Like, that was that guy. This is the guy who, like, brags about how his wife sold her book for so much money that she bought him an airplane called a Mooney. And he's just, like, it's like when Tay and Travis talk about, like, yeah, we just both support each other and we just both do what's good for each other. This year I'm canceling my birthday and my 10th year anniversary so that we can throw Mr. Knitting Coat Lady a giant college graduation / retired from 20 years in the Army, all at war during 2020, and so got nothing. So we're gonna throw him a big party.
To be fair, the first 18 months were
Which, by the way, if you're near College Park, Maryland, you may be invited to.
I was a pre-September 11th joiner of the military, so my first 18 months were not actually at war. It was like cooking time for Clinton Army. It was different.
Mr. Knitting Coat Lady spent 7 years total at war, so don't let it. I thought it was 7 or is it 5?
It's just under
It's 7
5.
us
It's just
together.
under 5.
Yeah, okay. It's almost 7 us 2 together. And we didn't get out of our pajamas for 2 weeks when Kandahar, followed by Kabul, fell very rapidly. And now I'm getting to be heartbroken by how many of y'all think we would turn weapons on you.
For all the death bros out there that were blaming Biden for leaving our allies behind in Afghanistan, look up what Trump just did to them.
What do you do?
Canceled all the flights to get the ones that we were still trying to get out.
Oh, of course you did. They're not white. Why would we do anything for them?
Left me stranded in various third world countries and canceled their visas to come to the United States. Start calling them third world countries, not appropriate. My mistake. I apologize.
Developing nations.
Yeah.
I learned this during the sensitivity read. Thanks, love. My sparkling grape juice for my grape juice problems. They did have so many service people brainwashed. So literally everything people say about Afghan is wrong. And for those of you that don't get the significance of what she's saying, the majority of Americans call them Afghani. They're the Afghan people. The Afghani is their money. And we terribly, terribly betrayed our partners in the end. Okay, and here's someone saying that they're very scared of being deployed against the people. Don't do it.
Just don't do it.
No one has. I know you're an E7, so I know you know this, but like no one has the ability to make you do it. The literal worst thing they could do is make you sit in jail. Sit in jail.
I seem to recall once there being a motto about integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. Loyalty, duty, respect, self-service, honor, integrity,
and like,
personal courage. It might take some personal
courage. And I know we're asking for a lot, and when you're fighting a system, you're gonna bleed. I know, but we need people who will just say no and stand in place and just say no.
Every single
like
one
it takes four. There are 4 people in between the president and a decision to hit that button. 4 people, and those people are supposed to just say no before doing something crazy. That's why it's a full bird colonel holding that thing.
Anyone in the Army in particular claims to have personal courage as one of their values. It's time to live up to it.
And for people that want to call me privileged for saying it, I am privileged. I also publicly testified against a white supremacist to get him kicked out of the army, and I'm here doing this. So I'm fighting the system with you too. And I won't stop until they make me. And hopefully there's enough of us in all different parts. And again, like, as you are brushing up on your German history, please also brush up on the very significant differences. Americans don't just walk away from 250 years of freedom. Like, no group of people has ever given back freedoms without a fight. And we just kind of did this election, white women. But like, if we all jump out of the pot, then you have 340 million frogs jumping around your kitchen and you're not getting anything done, even if you have billions of dollars. And it's really hard to get 340 million frogs out of your kitchen, even if you have access to all the money in the world. You will be battling that for years. Let's keep him battling for years. Donate to the ACLU. We, in my house, are thinking of trying to find a lawyer to be staged to submit a lawsuit because Mr. Knitting Coat Lady is one of the veterans he wants to target, who is receiving retirement and disability pay as he was promised in our contract. And if enough of us, like, the worst thing they could do is go after veterans. Like, that's such a way to get us to unite. You know, having things ready, join the ACLU, give them money sometimes instead of having a coffee, like, get into community organizing. Please, please, please remember this thing which I tell you, that we have the most sophisticated spy network in the world. And if I were hypothetically writing a novel, I would say only low tech will fly. I am writing a novel, y'all. It's called Daughters of God. It's 5 generations of mothers and daughters that come under religious extremism. And it's loosely based on the story of my family. Make it as expensive for them as possible. Exactly. Like, give them trouble. Be good trouble. Babe, do you have a Super Bowl prediction?
Sorry?
They're asking if you have a Super Bowl prediction.
Oh, I've learned that I'm terrible at predicting anything. My hope is for the Bills and the Commanders. That way we can, no matter who wins as a country, we can generally feel good about it.
That's true. I got the election wrong this time, but he gets the election wrong every time. Oh, I do wish I could boycott Amazon. I do. However, I'm an author that lives in the parking lot of a Whole Foods.
If anyone's wondering, an apple cider mimosa is complete crap.
There's my seal. Oh, and of course he's trying to get rid of FEMA, which is where my best friend works, Danielle, who you can read about in Uncultured. I'm not writing a novel low tech. I'm not participating in resistance or revolution activities right now. I'm in fact high tech, not giving up my voice in advance. But what I'm saying to people is, like, the winter boots thing. Like, all I had to do was ask and you gave me the code. Like, you will not beat the United States spy network high tech. And, like, that's what I can tell you. And until the revolution pops up, that's all I can tell you. Take that for what it's worth, or go study the war in Afghanistan. And like, I really think, especially as white people, like we've given up community for these groups. And, you know, we say it takes a village, but then we live in our little castles with our partner and trauma bond with our 2.5 children. And like, there is no more community. And like, that's the only way we're going to help each other. Like if the government turns on the American people, it's going to be low tech and it's going to be community. And the only thing I do these days is just go listen to Black women. Whenever I have a question about what I should be doing right now, go listen to Black women. They will tell you where to put your money, where to put your time, and like how to use your whiteness. Whiteness can be a shield and whiteness can be a weapon. So we can use it against them too. Like what I really want in the revolution is I want a brigade of 4,000 anti-racist Karens. And we could just march right into the White House. Listen to Black women, trust Black women, capitalize Black women. Those who are the most oppressed understand the oppressors the best. Yes, my book is on audio, only one right now. But my second book, Culting of America, is on my Matreon as like one chapter at a time. And I also wrote a second memoir that is only exists right now as a video book on my Matreon. But when you get done listening to Uncultured, if you want more of Daniela's stories, this time specifically deconstructing the cult of white supremacy and whiteness and privilege and power, then listen to Un-American. Yeah. So like, this is what we found out about putting women in combat too. Like for 243 years, we argued if women were good enough to be men, which argument presupposes that men know how to do combat best. But what we found out is that when both men and women are trying to unalive you, it makes a lot of sense to have both men and women on your side. Huh, funny that. Crazy. Ijoma Luo in So You Want to Talk About Race, she has just like such a good analogy. She says, you know, like if you are a white woman in America, you have had to go out of your way to learn about Black hair, or you know nothing about it. You either don't know or you've gone out of your way to learn it. But if you are a Black woman in America, you understand white hair because it's all white hair. You can almost do the same thing with straight versus curly hair. So like the people who don't have the perspective, you know, and I keep saying like straight white men, you can get this back in one generation. Just shh and listen. Like you are born in the generation where nobody wants to hear from you. We've had your perspective. We know how to do it the male way, straight white male way. Like we just need to give all of the voices a chance, which means some of y'all need to sit on the bench for like a long, long time. And white women are in that category as well. I specifically do not try to give examples for good groups in my book on bad groups, because you know what? Historically, we've not been the ones to build the good groups. So like, it really needs to be listen to Black women. And so who's writing the last chapter of Culting of America? Our favorite white woman whisperer. And it's going to be on community versus groups. Sorry, I almost signed my book to myself again, so I had to find a Dale. Were you laughing at me? Yeah. We do participate in the problem. Oh, my book is called Uncultured. It is pinned here if you would like a signed copy. It also can be found other places significantly more cheaply and in your audio or in your libraries, including on audio. We have done everything we could to make it accessible. It also comes in large print. Oh, Oklahoma reading the book. Yeah. Thank you. This is one of the things, like, look, I'm terrified. My business is selling dictatorships, and selling books don't go well together, but like, don't give up in advance. I completely understand. Don't buy it if you have too many books to read. I subscribe to this bookshelf ideology that your bookshelf is like your wine collection. It's mostly full of bottles of wine that you haven't had yet, and then some favorites that you know you're going to revisit. And that's how I do. So like most fiction book is going out in the little library. Oh, there's someone else here that they're on like the same anti-racism journey that I'm on, because we like trade our books back and forth and like get ideas from each other and leave notes. And I've never seen this person and they've never seen me, or maybe we walk by each other all the time. I also, whenever my book that I use for promotions gets like a bit beat up, I put it in the local library with a sign for people to keep it going. And I've never seen it hang out longer than 24 hours. If you purchase it through here, yes, it will be signed. If you want to purchase it at the link in my bio, it will also be signed. We're working on being able to pin it on Tube. It briefly let me pin it, and then they were like, do you hold this copyright? Which is a decent check. So now I have to prove that I have the right to sell my book. Which, by the way, if you ever get a book deal with traditional publishing, something you can ask for, if it's not already there, is to be an authorized reseller of your book. So I'm able to get these books at the same price as like Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, and it's in my contract. They can't keep up with my sales, so I still have to buy a lot of them from Jeff Bezos as well. I don't know if you're asking me what's wrong with me, but you got to read the book if you want to know the answer to that. It's true.
That's probably the best answer.
It's literally every time I sign a book to someone who was in my military unit or knew me in college, I'm like, I hope this explains why I'm so weird. But you know what? Weird is also interesting. Yes, I can describe my book in one sentence. It's about growing up in the Children of God religious cult and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army and the parallels that I found. And it is intended to make you ask the question, what cults are you in? Which is what I stamp into your book. And Knitting Cult Lady, I also stamp that into the book. Yeah, and part of the Amazon goes to Bezos' ex-wife, and she's maybe Mackenzie.
She's recently remarried. It was Scott.
Okay, Mackenzie Scott is like maybe as close to an ethical billionaire as we have. I mean, at least ever since she's like been the one in charge of her own purse strings. Those who listen to other perspectives and take them seriously will consistently have an advantage over those who don't. And this is like so technically true from the military intelligence perspective, right? So we have this quadrant of intelligence. There's 4 types of intelligence, right? Combined information, which you can use to make future predictions or just use intelligence, right? So you have things you know that you know, right? Easy. Things you don't know that you know. This is usually institutionalized knowledge that you have to mine in some way. Then you have things that you know you don't know. This is where the intelligence team works. We set collection requirements and then we go answer these questions. They're called SIRs. And then you have what is called the dark quadrant of intelligence. The things you don't know, you don't know. And you learn those things with someone who has perspective you don't have, or when it blows up in your face. So Pearl Harbor is always boiled down to an intelligence failure. It always is. Operation Success, intelligence failure, right? But in the media, and look, I love the movie. Oh my God, Josh Hartnett and Ben. Oh, okay. And Kate Beckinsale, just like biggest crushes on all of them. Okay. But like they show the intelligence failure being they lost the fleet, the Japanese fleet. The actual intelligence failure was they had no idea that Japan had the capabilities of reaching Hawaii. So it wouldn't matter if they knew where the Japanese fleet was, right? Those are the things you don't know, you don't know. In my book, we see me as the only woman on patrol. And we see me, number one, being pulled aside and told to watch my back against my fellow American soldiers. We don't see me being sent alone into an uncleared building out in Afghanistan because #story is not in the book. But we see me as the only woman on the team realizing something that the men don't realize, which is all the children are not here, right? Things you don't know, you don't know. I don't think any cults are better or worse. I have a 10-part thing that if you're a 10 out of 10, congratulations, you're a cult. And I think the only difference is time, money, and impunity of how bad you will get. And when people try to say, like, well, okay, there's obvious reasons that the U.S. Army and the Children of God are different. I'm like, you know what? You are right. The Children of God has raped and murdered many more people. Or sorry, the United States Army has raped and murdered many more people than the Children of God. Okay. Just like, having that right up front. It's been really weird ever since the inauguration, now that I'm like Captain Comfort, because like it's weird putting me in the weird position of having to defend the United States military, which is so not my brand. Being one of the first women veterans with a mass market memoir and an extraordinarily critical of the military one. I do speaking events at seminars if I am paid. You can send me a DM or at my link on my website. I'm with the Macmillan Speakers Bureau, and they will try to get you to pay me a fair amount and maybe buy a bunch of my books. He's the most interesting speaker you've ever had, though. I do a great talk about what we can learn about leadership from cults. Okay, this is the question is, was Mr. Knitting Coat Lady already evolved like me? I wasn't evolved like me either. We've both definitely been on huge deconstruction journeys, but it did take me about 7 years to pink pill him as a full feminist. And it was the day I sold my book. And I was like, yeah, on Wednesdays we smash the patriarchy. And he just looked at me as someone who before had told me that it seemed like I cared more about feminism than our marriage. And we had to, address that. And he just looked at me and he was like, okay, I'm with you. Like, and I want to smash the patriarchy too. And the way I explained feminism to him, by the way, when that was, first of all, only a man could say that. But second of all, like, feminism is not me and you, me against you. Feminism is me and you against our girl child having a 1 in 3 chance of before college. Like, boom. So anyways, once he was like fully feminist, a few weeks later, days later or something, he just asked, he was like, do you have to do this with every man you've ever dated? And I was like, what? And he was like, teach them all this stuff? And I was like, yeah. He goes, oh, babe, that must have been so exhausting. I said, I agree. You leave me and I don't think I have it in me. That seems like a thing you know how to answer for yourself, but it is 12:03. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we want the military to take over the government. Like, we want some adults in the room to put some reins on, and it's not going to be the politicians, and it's probably going to have to be the military, but like, we don't want that. Okay, so I get the most proceeds if you buy a signed copy of the book, however you do that. But also, I was very well paid for my stories. So, like, any way that you get it, I appreciate that. If you're buying it from me, a signed copy from me right now, what you were doing is investing in Culting of America, which is amazing. There's also a link where you can just invest in the fundraiser if anyone is interested. And that is because I am self-publishing the next one so that I can have the control. And like when most people say that, it's kind of an eye roll because it's like, okay, but do you know how to write a good book? But I do. So now I don't have to have other people invest if I can crowdsource it. I also hope to do that with the musical. Because, oh, if you're not tracking, I wrote a whole musical concept for Uncultured, the cult baby musical. And I'm so excited. It is on audio, yes. I recorded it myself. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in 5 days. Do I know if the Children of God marketed those videos to mainstream vacation Bible? The Children of God sold their religious and non-religious videos all over the entire world, millions and millions and millions of copies. If you were in evangelical Christianity and you watched kids singing and dancing, I was probably one of those kids, especially if you were all over the world outside of America. And for a sample, if you're on the Clock app, you can go to my Children of God playlist and you can see the End Time Rap, which is me and 5 other white children rapping apocalypse Bible verses in downtown Rio. And yes, I am going to reconstruct it in the musical. It's literally like when I would tell my soldiers, like, I grew up in a cult, and then I would just be like a real cult. Watch this video. But yes, you can buy a signed copy through my link in my bio, and that goes straight to me. TikTok just happens to make it incredibly easy to get books into people's hands. I don't think I was in the same time as Rose McGowan because I'm one of the older, younger kids. I was one of the oldest 3rd generation kids. I do get asked like if I knew Rose McGowan or Joaquin and River Phoenix. And I'm like, no. And ironically, I was the famous actress. They were just run-of-the-mill street performers. And it boils my blood when I see something about the Phoenix family being like, yeah, we were in a cult in Venezuela. I mean, and then we came to the States and the kids started a band. No. You continued to traffic your children the way that the cult taught you. And now one of them is not alive. There, fixed it for you. I think I'm going to build my musical with no children. And I think it might be puppets, which is both going to be probably triggering and healing for me. And then like the actual footage is me of a child in the background because there's so much of that I can choose to use. Which breaks Knitting Cult Baby's heart because she really wants to be in the play. But I just don't think I can get on board with children and entertainment being, a child from the entertainment cult. What do you mean? Oh, we performed twice in the White House, once for the president of Brazil, and wrote a marching song for Marcos, dictator of the Philippines, where I was born, which was then played every hour on the hour on national television.
Quick 2 things. Brazil's behind us said you're treating these people you're deporting inhumanely and it's not okay, so they won't accept any more flights along with Colombia and Mexico. And also Teslas have been officially renamed. They're now called swastikars.
That's just what we're calling them because we're not buying them, right?
Yes. I don't even think the owners are going with the bumper sticker that says bought it before we knew who he was.
Puppets would be funnier, and also like the Children of God famously like redid the Muppets, but like with child awful crap. And I spent very much of my childhood doing puppet shows. And when Knitting Cult Baby graduated from kindergarten, then I was just doing balloon animals at the graduation, and all the parents in the Ritzy school were like, what? Oh, yeah, I was a teenage carnival clown in Mexico. Just, you'll have to read the book. Mr. Knitting Cult Lady sent photos of me as a clown to all of his pilot friends who are afraid of clowns. Also, knitting cult baby is afraid of clowns. We got enough education to make you not pay attention. That's also part of why cults use performance so much, because nobody looks at the singing, dancing children and says, oh, I wonder if they're singing and dancing because they're deprived and beaten and not paid and essentially enslaved. No, nobody says that. Everyone says, oh, look at the cute, shiny, blonde children who can quote and read the King James Version of the Bible when they're 5 years old. And there is a chapter in my book called Bookworm, which is about our lack of education / I wish I had just called it homeschooled. I'm good at chapter titles, but I messed up that one. It's also funny when whenever I talk about homeschool, and people are like, well, you don't know anything. You grew up in a cult. And I'm like, so one, that's why we're all here. And two, I promise you, my cult only had more resources to put toward these big homeschool programs than you and your little family did. But we got enough education on how to BS our way through anything. And as I said, selling my own book from the virtual street corner is quite literally what I was made for. This one's just good and not exploitative. I did write this book. I think it's funny that people keep asking me this. Like, not Donald Trump, not signing a book I didn't write. We all find that very strange. This is my memoir, Uncultured, which is about growing up in the Children of God religious cult before going into the cult of the U.S. Army. And last time I was watching a cult leader run America, I was like, I think I have something to say. Oh, I love that your education was through Department of Defense schools and that they radicalized you. That is perfection. I got so lucky, man, that I had in high school in Texas just a radical Black feminist teacher. And so I got taught that the Civil War was not only about states' rights. She made sure to give us the woman perspective and the Black perspective on everything, which is my first American history class ever. So I'm just so grateful to her. And in Un-American, my next book, there's actually a chapter called Are We the Baddies? When she tells me that missionaries are agents of imperialism. And I'm like, oh, you're right. And then it's just so ironic that, like, even in our lie, we were not the good guys. Because the cult promise is always a lie. So, like, we knew that we weren't, like, missionaries deep in our hearts. Like, we knew that the money wasn't going to what we were saying it was going to, but just to supporting our commune and enriching our leaders. We especially knew because Captain Mestinet's grandfather is the guy who still runs the money for the Children of God. Also, Captain Mestinek, your friendly neighborhood intelligence officers, has spies in place that get her numbers. Whew. I don't know how many it's been yet, but of course, women in the military are at risk for violence from their peers and authorities. We always have been. It's also predictable that when you take a force of individuals programmed to conduct violence on behalf of state, because that's what militaries do, and program you to conduct violence on behalf of state, and then you tell them that 10 to 20% of us are not as good as them, this predictably ends in violence. I honestly, as someone who studies group behavior, think that our human illness is that we have to stack rank, and then we unalive the ones at the bottom. So ironically, being one of the first women on a deliberate ground combat team. Oh, I wish one of those had written a best-selling book. Oh, wait, that was me. Ironically, helping women get into combat made us safer. Don't you just love that? I know all the stories of people that tried to do stuff about the cult and why they all didn't work. I know all. Oh, I am willing to bet that I have read everything written about cults. Kind of been my life's work since I was 22 years old. Literally, as soon as I got safe, as soon as I commissioned in the military, and I was just like waiting to start spy school, I was like, Children of God cult. And 10 seconds later, I came face to face with my father on a website for known PDFs. And that was how I learned his legal name. All my stories are the most extreme. That book is ruined. To be returned. I do know Steve Hassan. I also know that Steve Hassan sold his soul to J.K. Rowling and agreed that trans identity is a cult, which he knows he's not possible or he's not very good expert. And he did this because she cited him in her cult book. So I only refer to him as he who shall not be named, and I am here to take his job.
It's so boring, self-centered in the chat with him.
Oh, even before this, I used to describe him as if mansplaining were a person, it would be Steve Hassan. And he was just like clearly the cult FGA, first generation adult, the cult joiner dude who got out of the cult and deconstructed, but never deconstructed patriarchy or any of the rest of it. And we all tried to call him in before he did it. Which is unfortunate because his bite model helped a lot of people and his book, The Cult of Trump, well, is still selling. Also, at the same time, he was walking around talking about how trans identity is a high-level government psyop. And as your friendly neighborhood intelligence officer, I promise you, never at any point in history have the people who are knowledgeable about high-level government psychological operations been talking to you about them on the internet. And there's a lot of this going on right now. People being like, well, Trump has a secret deal with Iran to come get Pompeo. Like, if that was true and you were saying it on the internet, you would be in Guantanamo by dinner. Same with drones. Nobody that knows anything about drones can talk to you about drones. In cults, we call this weaponization of secrets. And I just wrote all about this in Culting Up America. Oh yes, this slide is about my book. It's fun when people are like, you know, I was talking about your book, or like, why do you have, maybe don't have an ad in every video. I just am like, oh, so you work for free? Nobody has ever come back with an answer. Yeah, didn't think so. It's fun for me when the bros are like, what's your real job? Dude, I'm your worst nightmare. I have pink hair, faded from the purple. I have a liberal arts degree and a master's from Harvard. And my job is knitting, basket weaving, and talking to people on the internet. And I make more money than you. Yeah, I'm one of them people, and you're one of them people that can't keep from commenting, and you're the reason I make money. Me and my pink hair. Just keep going. Ching, 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 ching.
It's purple. I have pink.
No, it's pink now.
Let me see.
So it's purple to me, I'm with you.
Mine Let me see.
Maybe fuchsia.
Uh,
It's not even quite downgraded.
I am a fiber artist and a painter, and you both are trying to argue colors with me. I mean, it's faded purple. I think I'm just going to let it keep fading, and then I'm going to do hot pink for February. And I also remind you that workplaces that have only natural hair color policies, it's because racism. Specifically so that they can tell Black women that their blonde hair is not okay, because how dare you? By the way, in 2014, the United States Army had to withdraw their hair grooming regulations and apologize to the African American community because they were so blatantly racist. I have one 9-year-old knitting quilt baby. What's significant about 9-year-olds is I'm halfway done.
No. Sorry, we don't have any bacon.
I do also smell bacon.
We made an egg.
Oh. Never mind. I smell eggs. One time he made bacon in the house and bacon was not distributed. No, he doesn't do that anymore. What? How dare you? Also, something most people haven't thought about, but you know, when bacon got really, really cool in the US, you know what we were doing? Was it fighting Muslims? Yes, it was.
Oh my goodness.
Is everything attached to white supremacy? Yes, it is. Holy shit, 100K likes on this live.
100K?
That's what he's saying. I've sold so many books, I'm afraid to look at it.
Wow.
I know I'm never done, no matter how old Knitting Cult Baby gets. And that's actually one of the things I've had to have anger and rage and sadness about, because her whole life, when I'm there doing things for her, being her parent, my whole life, I call us first generation parents, and I'm not being facetious. I'm having fun teaching people language. Apparently most people didn't know what pejorative meant, so people are learning that. Oh, and I'm speaking of bacon, but no, when we were deployed, we had these bread makers, right? Anytime you wanted to get all the senior officers in the room, just put some bread on to bake 3 hours in advance.
Alexa, I don't want our timer.
We would eat it with Nutella. There is a picture of Captain Mestenek with a giant jar of Nutella somewhere. But my secret weapon was popcorn, okay? And it's like a cult baby thing. We do popcorn like no one else does popcorn. And paprika on popcorn was the one thing that Children of God cult got right. And I do a whole, this Knitting Cult Baby cult, she calls decorating the popcorn. But I put chicken bouillon on popcorn. And so literally we were deployed and people would be like, ma'am, I was sent over here from blah, blah, blah company because apparently you make the world's best popcorn. I'm like, okay, wait here. And I had to do microwave because we're deployed, right? So already it's 50% awful, but make the popcorn, bring it over, and put my stuff on it. They take a handful and it's basically like ramen, but popcorn, right? And they're like, yeah, okay. It's okay. They start walking away and my guys would just be like, wait for it. They'd get about 3 steps out and they would turn around and be like, okay, I gotta have more of that. And when I was eventually medically evacuated, apparently there was a fight over my chickeny stuff. And also nobody understood why I had 2 giant bottles of lime juice. The answer to that is, well, because I'm autistic but didn't know it. And I spent my teenagehood in Mexico, an entire culture that puts lime juice on everything. And I tell you, okay, so I grew up in Brazil, right? And in Brazil, they eat avocados with sugar and sometimes milk powder and they make avocado smoothies, and it is the most disgusting thing I've ever had to eat. And so when I was in 13, lying in bed with a broken leg, actually, which you can read about in Uncultured, #stories not in the book, I put lime juice and salt on an avocado, and I invented guacamole. And I was so effing proud of myself. And those big South American avocados, too. And then we proceeded to move to San Diego, followed by Mexico, where I learned that I did not, in fact, invent guacamole. But it was okay because my sadness was then tempered by an entire culture that puts lime juice on everything, including popcorn. Oh. And it's fun because, like, in Brazil and even the Philippines where I was born, they eat green mangoes, right, with salt, which is delicious. But I love to take a Brazilian in my arm and be like, and put some lime juice on it. And they're like, no, crazy. And then they eat it and they're like, obsessed. Also in Brazil, they don't differentiate between lime and lemon. Everything's just a lemon. Unless you're trying to be really specific about a lemon, then you say Cyprus lemon. And I can never figure out why I eat a bag full of Costco limes in a week and a half, right? Like, but I call everything a lemon. I could never figure it out until I went back to Brazil for the first time in 12 years when I was 24. And I was like, oh, the things that culture us. And that's actually my love bomb collars. And I did a Knitty Culting Patterns book. I recommend it as a PDF because it's not fancy. But I make these collars, the love bomb collars, I call them. And it was part of putting together my identity and dealing with the fact that there's nothing Mexican about me, except for the first 12 years of my life. I thought one guy was my dad who was Mexican, so I thought I was Mexican. And then also I lived in Mexico for the very significant formative years of 14 and 15. So anyways, the love bomb collar was invented. And I'm really excited one day to go to the parts of the world where my people are from, which is like Slovakia, Hungary, Poland, and they do these thread collars. And but this is part of why I make so many of my own clothes, because I am literally from nowhere. So the 10 years that I spent trying to just look like a WASP girl from Texas, cultural appropriation as well, not authentic to me. And I just think like, and I know I get misjudged by people as a white lady, and I have a friend who like redheaded and freckled, born and raised in India, Hare Krishna, right? Like looks like walking cultural appropriation. And I'm sorry, just we don't have a culture. When I went to fill out my author paperwork, the answer to my hometown is NA. And so my answer to that was I take from everything and I build my own. It's like I've done just beautiful scarfigans out of sari scarves. And oh my God, I'm doing a scrap. I just have to get it and show you. It's very Mexican to me. So I kept all of my scraps. I kept all of my scraps for 2024. So I have 3 types of scraps. I have yarn scraps, I have thread scraps from the jewelry, and then I have fuzzy yarn scraps. And this is my craft journal of 2025, which is excellent because I've sold so many pieces, so I like don't have them anymore, but I get to just like relive the whole year. So I'm almost done, but yeah, it's very like the Mexican part of my heart is happy. And I didn't think it was going to be as pretty as it is. I was thinking it was going to need like explanation for why it was meh, but apparently when your color scheme is everything, it works. Oh, look, I'll go get the sorry one because I want to show you. Or I'll throw all my books on the ground. Because yes, as a dancer, I get what you're saying. Be right back. Okay. These are the ones I'll show off for today. So here is the sari. Like, it was just the scarf that you wear with a sari. And I made this cardigan. I call it a scarf again. Take a scarf and turn it into a cardigan with crocheted or knitted sleeves. I made this one. So I cut these sleeves tips off a jacket that I then put fuzzy pink yarn on. So then I made this one. And first I crocheted and then I attached the sleeves. And it gives like professor with elbow patch. So I love it. This is the same sort of pattern as the sari one, but this is just random thrift store scarf plus bamboo yarn that I got on my trip to Portugal last summer. And this, I just invented, we're calling it the cardigan. I got this scarf in New York and I was going to do a regular scarf again where I cut it in half and then I cut one side in half. But as soon as I cut it, it just started to disintegrate. I've already had to fix the shoulders. So then I made this and it looks like fashionista Alice in Wonderland guard. And I've never got I was like, there's always for me with my creations, it's like, is it ridiculous or is it high fashion? And I've never gotten so many compliments on anything I've worn other than this. So y'all are great.
I know you have the boast to your side. I still think a little ridiculous.
No, and that's all Knitting Cult Baby wants me to make anymore is those ones. She's just like, she loves them. And this is what I tell y'all about like finding your identity, right? Like it was always there somewhere. A decade before I went on this journey, which I now have like a very defined look, right? But a decade before I went on this journey, I was in Afghanistan as perfect blonde Barbie in a uniform as you could be. And then I was given the chance to buy a headscarf to go on patrol. And the headscarf that I bought was purple and orange and glitter. So like, I was in there somewhere. And part of what the deconstruction and healing was for was just to like find that girl and let her out to live her life. You're exhausted because we've been here doing this for more than an hour. Yes. But oh my God, the books arrived at 9 o'clock last night and I was so happy. No, what's the glitter afro? I need it in my life. Yeah, so speaking of statement piece fashion, right? Like, again, I spent so long fitting in and I was so good at the image and the performance that I actually had to come up with a hack for dating because men would just be like, oh, white girl next door. And like, no, I'm not her. And then finally I was like, but why am I trying so hard to look like her? Like, what am I doing? And what was I saying about that? Oh yeah, the statement piece fashion. So, so very interesting to me, especially now that I've written the longest chapter about appearance control, was when I got my book deal. It was the last piece in years of work that we did to divorce our money from our time. And so I was like, boom, now I get like a 5-year runway to work on projects and develop new stuff and whatever, but also freedom, right? Financial freedom. And my first thought was, oh, I'm going to wear whatever I want for the rest of my life. If I'm going down as an author, I'm going to wear whatever I want for the rest of my life. And I decided that there was no reason to dress boring, so I never do. Oh, thank you for listening to my audiobook. So hard. Which cardigan am I showing again? The card again. I can put one of them on. This is the blazer that I wore to sell Uncultured. And it was the most masterful thing I've done in my whole life. And I did it in a flowery blazer. And I'm very proud of it. I still might cut the sleeves off at some point and put like fuzzy white sleeves. I Okay. I'm going to take a bio break and get more champagne for my champagne problems. You all decide which scarf again I'm changing into, and we will do that when I get back.
Does it really just stop when she steps out of the room? Because that's hilarious. Me too. Oof, yeah, go Hawks. Oh, Achilles, but that's definitely spelled differently.
What are you saying about me too?
Oh,
Y'all can have the TV.
I was just, commenting that I thought it was funny that it just kind of keeps going even when you're not quite in the room. Then someone said they love you, so I said me too. Yada, yada, yada. And then I got to go Hawks over here. I'm wearing Seahawks here because this is as Commanders adjacent as you can get today. Do you all have a P.O. box? She has a P.O. box, definitely. I'm sure she can give you that information. She just changed my life. Join the club happened for me like a decade ago. How did you two meet? It's in the book.
That
Really?
was exactly a decade ago.
Although
oh, you're so much nicer than me. I always just take the opportunity to tell the story.
there's a couple
right.
of stories. I don't know which one she wants to tell about how we met.
This is Mr. Knitting Call Lady.
Oh, yeah,
Did they say which one I'm changing into?
Mm-hmm. Oh, the red one. I saw something about a red one in there.
People love it.
Bought the book a few minutes ago. It's a great story. I actually read it to a bunch of people at a B&B in.
Oh, tell them about that.
where
Tell
did
them
I
how I
go?
sent you off in your airplane to read it.
So before the book was published, I hadn't read it yet. She didn't want me to / I didn't want to read it till it was a final product. And then when she said, okay, it's done here, this was after she bought me the airplane. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to go on a trip with the airplane and just go hide in a B&B for a couple days and read the book. Great experience. Got to sit down and read it with my feet kicked up by a fireplace by day and then go drink in the local casino by night in Virginia. It was a wonderful trip.
Other
Anyway.
than, trauma reading for 13 hours.
Yeah, but I was familiar with a lot of it at least. I have an Eagles ornament. Oof, sorry.
The first Super Bowl I ever watched was when the Eagles beat the Patriots. And I was going to root for the Eagles, but then I saw Tom Brady, so then I switched. And now, F that guy. Yeah, that was like my first year in America.
Halfway through it, intense and interesting, for sure. Go Pack Go. You're a few weeks late there. I think they won about as many playoff games as the Vikings did this year. How do you look at both of the... Oh, yeah.
Of course, I'm a Swiftie, so I want the Chiefs.
I meant Seahawks.
Here we are.
Oh, all right.
Whole new look. Right? It's fab.
That's pretty good.
And this one gets me comments from young and older Black men, which are my favorite comments. I always say my fashion is to make older Black ladies happy. And I live in Maryland. So, I just get into so many conversations with so many different fascinating Black women because my style isn't boring white lady anymore. But recently I've started having young and old Black men stop me and tell me that my fashion was great. And I just cherish these moments so much. Also, check out my podcast, Hey White Women. It is me and White Woman Whisperer, a Black creator, sitting around in a crochet circle and deconstructing white supremacy like the cult that it is. You can get videos of that on my Tube or my Matreon. And it's also a podcast, so you can just listen to it. But it's fun to watch us because we're fabulous. Oh, yes, my P.O. Box. Okay, so it's P.O. Box O, not 0, College Park, Maryland, 27040. And I also do a happy hour once a month in College Park, Maryland. if you are local. And once a quarter now, we've committed to going to DC, which I think also is going to mean once a quarter I'm committed to going to Baltimore. So that's where I am in the world. And when I do travel, we do pop-up cult happy hours. And we recently did one in Philly because I was there to speak to a college, which is another thing I think I'm very good at, is speaking to college students. And I want to tell every college student in America 3 things. Anything in the space of personal transformation, predators are going to show up. And college is one of those. Anything you're going to go into and come out a different person, predators are going to show up, including just recently moved, right? Number 2 is any group trying to recruit you and everybody is happy and shiny and bouncy and pretty, run. Have you and your 5 best friends ever showed up that way all on the same day? Outside of church? No. Attitude and appearance control. And 3, when somebody tells you you're so mature for your age, they're not complimenting you, they are targeting you. Because we earn precocious maturity from growing up out of order, which often comes from trauma. And predators are looking for people who know how to be prey. And it's so hard because it's true. We are so mature for our age. And usually that shows up as a bad thing in our lives. So when someone sees it and compliments us for it, it's like when these toxic men would tell me, like, oh, but Daniela, there's no one else on earth like you. Oh, I don't know what violation they just gave me. And I would be like, it's hard to deny that because it's true. And then finally someone told me to get over myself because I'm not as special as I think I am. And that was so important for me to hear. And I say that to everyone now. And part of what I love about cult memoir book club is that, like, look, if you grew up in a cult, you're probably the most interesting extreme story in any room that you're usually in. Until you get into my cult survivor room. And then we're all the same. And I don't know why it is so helpful to know that other people have been through your trauma. Because, like, none of us would ever wish it on anyone else. But part of what was so great about writing Uncultured and then Un-American with other women is I could put things down on the page that either were so traumatic or I thought made me so despicable. And then I could have other women echo back to me that, like, yes, I feel this too. And also, you're an old soul. I got asked recently on Tube, someone was like, how do you look 20 and 50 at the same time? And I was like, oh, if we could sum up the cult baby look. And I don't know how to write rap, so I'm going to need a partner. But in the musical, there is going to be, we were delayed adolescents, so now we have to have a delayed adolescence. It's going to be set to Taylor's, I passed all my classmates and then was graded on the curve, whatever that. I can't think of it right now because I'm listening to a different Tay-Tay song in my ear. But I tell you what, once we deconstruct the trauma and then every bit of it is ours to use, we're pretty effing cool people. And this I also tell you, white ladies, like, when you deconstruct the whiteness and then understand that your whiteness can be both a shield for those who don't have it and a weapon for those who think they can control it, beautiful. And I saw someone did say, and I'm tempted to, and probably am going to start some kind of group, just online gathering point of anti-racist Karen Brigade. Give me 4,000 anti-racist white ladies. And we can do a lot. We are the second most powerful voices in the country, and we failed miserably on this last election. And this is now our job. If you are the 48% of white women who didn't vote for Trump, we got to go get the 52% of our sisters. Like, this is on us. I'm going to have to delete this. YouTube live because it's so rambly and so long. Yeah, I'm so the head of the curve that the curve became a sphere. Behind all my classmates and I ended up here. I am stealing as much as I can legally steal from songs and musicals and creating my own musical. It's called a pastiche. It's also a comment on cults and plagiarism and how nothing is real. I have to pause you a little bit, friends. Oh my goodness, babe. I've sold 88 books today.
88?
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, we've sold 88 books today, TikTok. I'm drowning. So I have a book club, right? Like I'm very, very actively not creating groups. I'm trying to create community. I don't want to create groups. I don't want to manage groups. Like I'm not that kind of a leader. I have a book club and you can join it in my Matreon. I think on YouTube it is linked in my bio. And it's families. I mean, we always joke for spouses. Oh, it's so funny. From Children of God. Every time your systemite, that's you outsider's spouse, like meets someone else from Children of God, and they're just there going, oh my gosh, there are more of you. Like, yeah.
Frequently, those conversations occur in other languages, though, so you can really avoid them or ignore them.
Oh, why is the audio lagging? That's a bummer. My TV isn't even on.
Seems like a blame China.
Try
moment.
pausing, then unpausing. Okay.
Oh, that's probably the problem. Yeah.
Huh?
The pause, unpause.
Yeah, but how do we get back?
Good question.
Yeah, I closed it out because I wanted to look at the books, and I hope I didn't ruin the whole thing. But y'all, I've sold almost 100 books while sitting here signing books. This is my secret. My other secret was just like finally learning, and this goes with the deconstruction and figuring everything out, right? Y'all read my audiobook and told me I needed to look into neurodiversity, and now we know I'm very much an ADHD. Just like understanding I'm a verbal processor. I have unmitigated echolalia, so I need to be talking and listening to music and all of these things. But it's like, I know this. And when I do go to put words to paper now, I'm so good at just downloading 20 pages because like we've talked about it. Oh, you're running out of batteries. Now we have to plug you in. And I remind y'all too that part of how we resist is not giving up our voices in advance. Yes, technology. Yes, it's scary. Yes, they can come get us, but also make them come get us. I really thought I was going to move to Portugal and just ride off into the sunset. It's dead. Yeah, but we got to train the revolution. We know we do. Yeah, so when you say everything I listed is you, almost everyone who has studied cults has said in one way or the other, all cults are the same. Different details, same story. So personally, I had this journey where, I told you when I was 22, I started like researching Children of God. And I read everything written by or about Children of God. And then I started going to other obvious cults, right? So FLDS, the polygamous Mormons. And then I started reading about regular Mormons. But I was still like, okay, the problem is Christianity. And then I listened to a girl who grew up in Scientology. And this is where a full decade before I heard Dr. Janja Lalich say cults are about labor and understood my childhood for the first time, I recognized the child labor in Jenna Miscavige's account of growing up in Scientology. And I was like, oh, the problem is not Christianity. The problem is cults. And this is like, nowadays, always like people just be like, oh, religion or cults. And I'm just like, can we please stop with this one? Religions are worldviews. Cults give you a worldview. It's not necessarily religions. Religions are constructed worldviews that are easy to use to manipulate people, because most religions have some point on which you must stop taking everything by logic and take things by faith. But cults are not always religious. Find my AirPods, sorry. My AirPods, friends. Someone asked me the other day, they were like, you're going to have to like walk us through these next 4 years. I was like, oh, I know. I know. I once spent exactly 4 years in a cult that I was desperate to get out of. From the ages of 11 to 15. And often when we have to advise people who are in cults that can't leave them, it's because they are teenagers or children who cannot leave. The answer to what you do when you are in a cult that you cannot leave is you survive and you resist. Wearing lots of color is a pretty insidious way of resisting, turns out. Mustache Man, Hugh Hefner, and probably your favorite patriarch all hate red lipstick. You know why? Because red lipstick is adult, red lipstick is bold, and red lipstick is messy. And as I say in my Skinny White Woman chapter of Culting of America, good women in America are supposed to be quiet, skinny, and a light shade of beige. And as soon as you stop doing that, the patriarchy begins to reject you. I do have a podcast. I have a podcast called Cults and the Culting of America, and another podcast called Hey White Women, where we are deconstructing white supremacy, like the cult that it is. Aaron.
Don't forget to be nice.
Thank you. I did have lots of help in writing the book, as almost everyone does who has a traditionally published book. I'm so appreciative for it. I have discovered that I am the Sheldon Cooper of language, which means I'm the Sheldon Cooper of language. I think they edited a lot. If you buy my book, you can find out how long I was in the Army for. I'm not a fan of answering that question at this point in history because it's very bro-y to show up here and ask me to give you my credentials. No one has ever once done it to Mr. Knitting Cult Lady. So even if you don't realize how bro-oligarchy it is, you can find out how long I was in the Army for Googling me all over my account or by reading my book. I was captain I deployed twice. Got an award from President Obama and a coin. And there's a fun chapter at the end of my book called Mr. Obama, Mr. President, we're not lesbians. Except sometimes we are. Just got into knitting. Oh, I'm so glad you got into knitting. Knitting Cult Baby just finished her first thing. And two things. One, she's just learning. But two, people ask me all the time, they're like, I've been knitting for 20 years. How long did it take you to learn to knit without looking? I'm like, I don't remember, but quickly. And also my 9-year-old can already do it. I just think it's a specific skill that some people have. My adopted Brazilian host daughter, same. The only two people I've ever seen see a knitting thing one time and be able to reproduce it are the two humans who have been my daughters. And then I didn't sign her up for after school knitting club, and apparently I was in trouble. And I'm like, but you live in a knitting club. She's also really good at teaching other children to knit and crochet. These signed copies are not first editions. So the first edition was the hard copy. 22,000 of those were printed. They are sold out. Then we have editions. Oh, so if you were like in my life enough to be one of the first 30 free copies that I got, your book is also signed very ugly with wide Sharpie right on the inside cover because I didn't understand that you were supposed to sign it on the title page. So you know you're special. And then recently, I used to write something additional. Dear so-and-so, thanks for being in my community. What cults are you in? And recently, I had to edit that down so that I can keep going with signed copies. But at some point, I will reach a tipping point. And today, I think, was that tipping point. I just refuse to make them any more expensive. I'll just put a cap on it. Yeah, knitting is fun. And I did make a little like pattern book, which does not teach you to knit. You have to learn how to knit. Just walks you through some of my signature pieces. And I was hesitant to make a pattern book because they're definitely not complicated patterns. And also, if you want a knitting pattern for anything, you can just go to ChatGPT and tell it to write you one. But if you specifically want. So what I have is like the love bomb collar. And then I have the explanation of how to make it and a couple photos. And then I have what is love bombing. That's how cute it is. His name is Dante. As someone who loves revenge, you get an emboss. Yeah, knitting is hard. Like you have to figure out how to hold your hands. And like the other piece of advice I would give you, I have to grab some knitting to show you. It's just like, instead of, okay, so there's two things. Like, first of all, you want to understand that you are, so you're hooking into an existing stitch, hooking into a stitch, wrapping around, and then pulling that off. So it's one way to understand it, right? They say stab him, strangle him, throw him off a cliff. Okay. But also, if you just understand the movement, if you have your two stitches like this and you go under the first stitch, all I'm doing is going click, wrap, click, pull. Click, wrap, click, pull. Knitting Cult Baby made up a thing about launching astronauts to the moon, and I don't remember how it is, but it's very useful for teaching child babies how to knit. Clap, wrap, pull. I did change my outfit. Yes. I brought down some outfits to show. And then since we're doing such a marathon today, and this is like such a huge favorite outfit for folks, I was like, okay, I'll put on a different outfit. Literally, I didn't know if I was going to throw this away or wear it, but the numbers are in. People enjoy. Hey there. Because loving you was red. Yeah, so I knit and crochet also. It's just like knitting is, again, the one I can just do like completely by feel. I am now at the point where I can crochet and read and stuff. But it's like usually if I'm knitting is when I'm talking or reading or like I need to be just really, really easy muscle memory. But it's too boring for me if I'm doing something like listening to an audiobook or watching something. So then I'm always like crocheting. And you can make really cool things with crochet. I mentioned that my book discusses the army. Do I mean the army as a whole? So it is a memoir. So it is my story through my eyes the whole time. Growing up in a religious cult and then going into the army. And I particularly take on, through my experience, the culting of the army as a whole, but also the particular parallel of schmexual violence for women in the military and someone who grew up in a schmex cult. So those are my two lenses. I do wish I had taken on racism a little harder. I wasn't there yet, but I did, in response, write a whole second book deconstructing that. And it's called Un-American. And it exists on as a video book on my Patreon, through which you can also get access to our book clubs. And I will do it after. Okay, now this person's got to get a sticker because they have the same name as Knitting Cult Baby, and it's a rare name. Oh, so born into religious cults, 3 generations into religious cults, actually. My book's not that hard. 3 generations into religious cults, which, like, I was never a believer. Like, I was just a prisoner in the cult for 15 years. I was definitely a true believer in the army. And it definitely broke my heart just as much, if not more. Band trauma. I have read A Well-Trained Wife by Tia Levings many times before everyone else. She's like a sister author who is, I believe, a year behind me in the same journey with my same publisher and audiobook editor or director. I've read it, I've listened to it, and it is the last book that we do. It's the book that we do in September of the Cult Book Club. We also recently interviewed her. We interviewed her on Cults and the Culting of America podcast. And then the next episode, so that was 2 weeks ago. And then the next episode that we just released this week was other ILBP people who were also on the Shiny Happy People documentary. She is amazing. I'm so happy and proud that her book made New York Times. And it is one of the few cult books that really gives you the deconstruction and the healing. So I really like it for that, as opposed to uncultured gives you basically none of that. Uncultured is being in a cult and then waking up to the crack in the brainwashing and making the decision to leave, and then again. Uncultured is also, again, what I call like the power of the extreme story. And what I think is so important about Tia Levings' story is it's just as extreme, but there's a family like that in every church in America. And oh, by the way, she was in the specific cult that Hog's Breath is in, Doug Wilson's horrible, patriarchal, disciplining your wife by spanking her church. Yeah. Who thinks that we need a crusade and another civil war to heal America. We should all unalive each other to heal the division. Great. No, it's not so normal to have children afraid of breaking attention at the coat. And in fact, you really see this in the Waco paperwork where like the children that were taken away from the FBI, and the FBI is like lauding these children. I mean, they're so amazingly behaved. The 3-year-olds sit there for hours in the middle of the night just listening to David preach. Yeah, because they're terrified. People are like, they watched the anti-rat video and they're like, how did they get you to do this? Like, they beat us and starved us and slave labored us. And then surprisingly, we performed for the crowd. And I have this in the musical. It's a song called The Making of a Cult Baby. And it starts with the 3 cult commandments. And you go through all of it, and the whole time as she's going through, she's like smiling and performing for the camera. And finally, when she's a teenager, she like stops smiling and performing for the camera. And then the troubled teen industry comes in and takes her away. And then when she comes back for the next song, welcome to the family international. She's smiling and perfect and performing again. Thank you. Also, I have no makeup on other than lipstick. Makeup isn't so good with my face. Also, most of the wake up and the way we've been taught to do makeup is emphasizing whiteness, and I feel really torn and conflicted about it. Yeah, having to hold your body parts and poses for a certain amount of hours is called stress positions, and it's a form of torture. That shows up in the book too. Also, almost every state in America has a part of a form of child abuse is military drills. So if you grew up with that, what I feel about Red Note is I'm the kind of person married to the kind of person that can't be on Red Note. As a sociologist, I'm fascinated with Americans' response, specifically Gen Z's response to trying to ban TikTok, and I just wish they would try a draft. Low-key would love to see not only Gen Z, but Gen X, their parents' response to a draft. I mean, get me some popcorn. And please, please try to control a brigade of 18-year-old infantry women that don't want to be in the military. One of the things about a draft military is it's much harder to brainwash because we buy into our own indoctrination. Think about Vietnam. think how much they want that again. BRB. We're maybe not even close to 200 books yet.
Well, we can do it with the broken hearts.
People are also saying they'll turn on the US if draft. Of course they will. And like, this is one of the things I've been saying. Like, everyone making all these Germany comparisons. Look, it's important. The differences are also important. Mustache Man was operating on a Germany that had 14 years of democracy, not 249. Germans, there's a joke. So I studied abroad in Germany in college. And there's a joke that Germans make about themselves, which is the reason that Germany has never had a popular revolution is because the peasants couldn't afford the train fare. And it is not in the German makeup to do something like ride the train without paying your fare to go to the protest. Martial law is much easier to implement in Latin America because when the Latin American militaries come marching down the streets in their country, people tend to stay in their homes. The culture of the place matters too. And also the fact that there's no army in the world that is big enough to physically occupy America, whether to control borders or to enforce martial law, including our army. This is why we're not very worried about international external threats, existential threats to America outside of, that's why nukes were obviously frightening. Also, there are 4 people in between Cult 45 and pushing that big red button. Again, he's going to try to be a dictator. It's important to analyze what he's actually accomplishing. And I remind you, exhaustion is part of what they are trying to do to us right now. These 100 days is just going to be shock and awe, and then throwing literally everything at the wall. Also, I'm scared too. Apparently, according to many 5-star reviews that loved my book, you can tell from my clipped military way of speaking. The greater the emergency, the less you panic. It was funny because I've had my wallet stolen. Once when I was 19, back on a visit in Mexico, and once when I was a new lieutenant in the Army. And according to my family, the difference of like sitting down and sobbing and just within 5 minutes having everything done and canceled and being glad that the person took the purse and not the baby. But yeah, Americans don't just quietly stay in their houses and give up free. Like, we don't do that. So don't do that. Oh, they might shoot you. Yeah, they can't shoot all of us. I say this, the Second Amendment, null and void. Technology fundamentally makes it null and void, right? Like, it don't care how many weapons you stockpile, you cannot stand up to the US Air Force alone, unless it's all of us at the same time. They cannot control all of us. So I think what we really need to be doing is not panicking, but asking ourselves, like, what are we willing to do? You can literally come for my trans sibling over my privileged white lady dead body. But even with saying things like, if birthright citizenship passes, yeah, if birthright citizenship passes, I might lose my citizenship and end up stateless. But that's not been indicated. They're very specifically targeting illegal immigration, and it is despicable, and it is going to be abused, and they're going to push it further, but we're not there yet. And being able to assess where we actually are is how we figure out the response. And I say this, like, the apocalypticizing, it's helpful for the cult leaders. Because if you think, like the time someone put off an accidental alert to Hawaii that there were incoming missiles, right? Like, if you think you only have 20 minutes left, by the way, My Cult Children of God had a song, 20 minutes to go, how much love can you show? And the nukes are coming and all we can do is sit down and hug our family, not fight back. You don't have 20 minutes left. He only has 4 years to punch as many holes as he can in our ship. And we need to try to not let it sink. And that will take absolutely all of us asking ourselves, what are we willing to do? Because he's going to try. I'm not wrong about my predictions. He is going to try to be a dictator. I believe we have more safeties than that. And it would suck to be stateless, especially since, like, look, nobody would kick me out of the US. I'm a former officer, former top secret clearance holder, have a kid born here, have a husband born here, but, like, I wouldn't be able to travel ever again. It happens sometimes, specifically with people who have parents in the Philippines who end up stateless. I knew somebody from the cult who had to run across the border to have her baby in the US because she found out belatedly that she wasn't going to be able to pass down her American citizenship because she was also born abroad, and it only lasts one generation if you haven't lived in the US. Now she votes for Trump. It doesn't see the irony in her little anchor baby because he's white. Yes, try to be a dictator. If you haven't noticed, our systems are pushing back. His thing was thrown out for being blatantly unconstitutional. Like, Biden put a lot of judges in place too. He's going to try to be a dictator. You assuming that he already is? People sitting down and saying he's already destroyed the Constitution? No, stop it. Why are you surrendering in advance? Make them shoot you. 300 bodies lying on the road is a pretty effective anti-tank weapon when an American private is at the wheel. Call them on their bullshit. White people, use your face as a weapon. I won't go anywhere if I end up stateless. I will have to just stay here for the rest of my life. I don't think that will happen. Like, I think that's apocalypticizing. They're not talking about taking away citizenship that has been handed down by Americans, at least not to white people. So I don't need to be panicking for myself. I need to be donating to the ACLU as fast as I can so that they are there to help protect the people like Native Americans and African Americans whose stuff is being gone after. Like, the one thing about fascism is it depends on us accepting that human beings come in a hierarchy. In my opinion, the creepiest photo out of the entire Holocaust is the Polish people, my people, brushing off their ashes off their cars to go to work. Stand in front of Anne Frank's house with your white face and make them shoot you. And you know what? People are like, oh, the tank would win the battle with those 300 people. Yes, they would, but they would absolutely win the war. Because 300 of us would lay down our lives, and the 340 million of you would come out in response. Be the opposite of the people being like, I'm pulling my kid out of school because pew-pews. Be the adult in the room and fucking fight back. No, don't shoot for it. You're not going to outshoot the United States military. Fuck that. Put your neck on the guillotine and make them do it. I could look at any 18-year-old private in the world, in our army, and dare them to shoot me in the face. And I am pretty sure I would walk away alive. They cannot run America by force unless we let them. Germans, personality was made to let them. And they only have 14 years of democracy. This is America. This is who we've always been, but we're finally saying it out loud. But also, this is effing America. White people, there have always been some of us that have given our lives for the people who weren't assessed as people. Be those people. Yes, it's a huge gamble. But what? You're not going to take... If you don't take that gamble, if you move out of the way and let them go for someone else, you are saying that you are worth more than them. You are agreeing to that hierarchy. Just the same as when you take your precious little babies out of school and let the other ones get shot. And if you're that person, I don't want to know you. Just sit down. Get out of the way of the revolution. Go protect yourself. We don't need you. It only takes 3.4% of people to change a system by force. 3.4. Less than 1% of us, and we still have more people than the military. It's very ironic because I live on a street where I'm the only white owning household, and I'm the one that has a violent white supremacist out to get me. I do know what I'm talking about. Make them come get you. Or don't, but don't tell yourself that you were willing to fight back when they came for others. If you gave me 4,000 white women, I could stop him right now. Right now. Come hang out with me in DC for 1 month. Now, I don't need Airbnbs. I'll teach you how to build tents. We'll just wait till the weather. The intelligence officer is also there to consider the weather. I fucking love the fact that the 20th was just, oh my God. I did that. I'm a weather witch. Even Knitting Cult Baby is a baby weather witch. Oh, is that just autistic pattern recognition? Weather witch. Nah, you don't need camping gear. I own a warrant officer. We can survive in the wilderness. Oh, you don't got to be white. You don't got to be white. We can get you a black wig or a blonde wig, though, and you'll just be like on the second rank. And me and my ladies, we're going to waltz up to the White House. We might have our wine, and I'm just going to be like, oh, excuse me, Mr. Police Officer. My high heels caught on your tripwire. Can you move that out of the way for me? Thank you. You privately organize yourselves. Use every tool you have right now, which includes technology. But the second the revolution actually begins, never, never forget what Sir William Cecil taught Queen Elizabeth. The people that are the empires is not because they have the best armies, it's because they have the best spy network. And the one way, the only way to beat a high-tech spy network is with no tech. Yeah, on my podcast, Hey White Women, with White Woman Whisperer, we were talking about how like we just need like white women, like take your book clubs, have a designated driver, have a wine van, and just follow the cops around in neighborhoods of color. When you see cops interacting with black people, pull your car over and just put your white face there watching. In my musical, the Brogans, everyone's a person on a chessboard, and the Brogans are going to be the queens. And I can't wait for them to be like, oh, she's trying to insult us, because I'm not insulting you by making you a woman. I am saying that you have the most powerful voice on this chessboard. Come fucking get on our side. Literally every time I talk about women's bodily autonomy and people are like, you know, men are raped too. I do know that. Please tell them to come add their more powerful voices to our fight. And then I get told, but Knitting Cult Lady, you don't understand. They're so mean to them. Do they make me cookies? Oatmeal raisin. Never once. I've never once been given cookies for advocating for stopping raping women. Unnatural hair helps. It helps me go viral every day because the bros can't stop themselves from being like, oh, someone with purple hair. Yes, and I'm using your money to fund the revolution. And my basket weaving. You didn't know this. Knitting is Morse code. My favorite fact about World War II is that both sides were using knitting spies. Why is that my favorite fact about World War II? Because both sides' major armies so underestimate women that they were not regularly catching the knitting spies. They are focused on your hair because good women in the United States, which is to say in white supremacy, are quiet, skinny, and a light shade of beige. Don't be that. But also, I love when people are like, oh, says a skinny white woman. Yes, the best people to get people out of a cult are the ex-members. Part of deconstructing white supremacy is understanding that you as a white or white passing woman are in the second most powerful voice in the fucking world. Use it. Don't be quiet. Get mad. Get loud. take your red lipstick and put it all over your fucking face and then go speak truth to power. Because if white women, if we choose to stop cooperating, we own the money. White women drive trillions of dollars, and white women have more financial control than white men. More. Because we tend to control our budgets. Not here, because nobody wants me controlling a budget. I just print the cash. Like, the more you're scared that they're going to shoot you, go out there. You know what they're fucking scared of? 4,000 white women showing up and saying, shoot us. They would lose. They know that. Like, in your book clubs, engage your fellow white women about how far you are willing to go to protect other human beings. Dare them to shoot you. This is how Canada got healthcare as a right for all women, by the way. A male doctor just gave the healthcare and went to jail, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 times, went to court, I believe. And the jury refused to convict him. And finally, not only did they stop arresting him, they said, fucking fine, we'll pass the law. We don't even need the 52% that voted for him. We need 3.4% of us. Whew. I'm gonna have to stop soon. Every time I'm feeling bad or scared, though, I just get on the internet and start yelling, and then I'm energized. I have to meet with a student who wants to interview me, so I probably have to stop drinking champagne with my champagne problems. The problem with writing dear to all of you, I just want you to know, is that my name starts with a D, and so I very regularly assign books to Daniela instead of the people I'm supposed to be signing them to. Or Dana, or D. You can do a similar thing with crochet patterns. The problem with crochet patterns is you have to know the pattern. Knitting is binary. You have a knit stitch and you have an upside down knit stitch called a purl. So on its own, it's Morse code. Anything that's binary is Morse code. With crochet, you can make different stitches in different patterns, but there are many. So you have to have the key. And when you have a key, it's easier for people to decode, right? So that's also, if anyone knows that knitting is Morse code, then they also know that. So these are all things to consider. But again, it's so funny when people show up here and they're like, shh, don't tell them. I'm like, you're not listening to the knitting lady covered in yarn. They're willing, the amount of men that tell me every day on social media to go get some military experience before I dare to criticize the military is like, that is a weapon we can use against them. The fact that they're going to underestimate us and our wine ban, and they're not going to understand that a full wine bottle is a fucking amazing weapon. And you can still drink it afterward. It rarely breaks. My guilty pleasure is listening to those books where a woman today is facing something where she has to go unearth someone she finds out she's connected to who was a part of the resistance in World War II. Guilty pleasure novels, and they give us the map. Water bottle and string, metal water bottle. Knitting needles. Oh my God. We were out yesterday. I can't remember where we were. We were somewhere. Oh, I took knitting help baby to a skate zone. And at one point, like, so I went, because someone was about to crash into us, right? And we're sitting on a bench. And she goes, oh, I thought there was like a killer behind me. And I was like, stick my nails. And went, come on. Every time I watch a Gladiator movie and they do that move. Also, I learned when I was breastfeeding that many TSA agents, especially in Australia, think that breast pump plus sewing needles equals terrorists. And they would stop. And it's so funny if you're a crafter, like they would take all the big ones, which are the blunt yarn needles. And sometimes they'll take my crochet hooks. And I'm like, I promise you, if I'm going to hijack an airplane, I'm not going to crochet the pilot into the cockpit. I'm going to take that little tiny sharp needle that you left me and put it right in his temple. This is why they'll never see us coming, y'all. There's a reason that women used to wear a lot of hat pins. I also found out recently that as soon as it became scientifically possible to detect cyanide, magically women all over the world learned how to cook better and food poisoning became less common. Do with that information what you will.
Also tastes delicious. You could definitely get me with it.
I could. I'd just be like, eat this almond tart. A disgusting thing that only Americans would eat. He'd be like, gobble, gobble, gobble. See, Knitting Cult Lady was born abroad. Also, somebody would put naked pictures of me on the internet.
The internet doesn't deserve those.
Even if they didn't exist, someone would put AI pictures, and I bet the real ones are better. We had a congressman, Dan Brown, who was on the cover of Playgirl, because of course, and who was a congressperson.
Wasn't Lauren Boebert in Escort? Like, there's credible.
Don't know.
I think there's credible information out there about Lauren Boebert's previous work before she was a congressperson, and then a carpet begging congressperson.
Yeah, but see, or the ladies, the husbands would go missing while they're feeding the pigs. The way you deal with high tech is low tech. Nobody's trying to stop anyone from leaving the US yet. They're trying to target gender identity. They're trying to say your existence is not legitimate. We have to refuse to accept that. Description of the cult might apply to religious organizations, not organized religion. A cult has to be a group.
Some sort of like ethereal being. Like, for example, what I'm dressed like right now. Before we get into it, make sure to follow me on Roblox and Instagram. On Instagram,
We also understand that you gotta do what you gotta do yourself with passport to make sure you can travel.
Yeah.
We won't hold it against you ever.
No, I keep saying this. Like in a revolution, like some people need to flee and some people need to fight. The fact that Einstein fled worked out for us.
And
You know what I mean? Like neon and then like some like hints of black for some color. This looks like insane, probably. I kind of like it.
It's minimalistic is setting on a washer. I like that. It's a good one. The book is definitely very triggering, but also helpful. I hope that's true. All right. I think I'm going to go soon because I have to adult again in 2 hours.
You're right.
I think supporting food security is definitely an important form of support. And Mr. Knitting Coat Lady is actually getting his bachelor's degree in urban agriculture and global poverty with a background in aviation. So I hope he's going to be part of. He's born into children of God. It's usually called COG. You have a D there, so I'm not sure if you're referring to something else. Carly. I have a book signed to a Carly. I've been waiting for Carly. Oh, man. I have a book to a Nick and a Michelle, and I signed 2 of those today, and I didn't get them. Also have a book signed to a Jamal. I think that one will take a while.
Is it spelled right?
Carly?
Yeah.
Yes. It's an Amazon print demand book, so it's much bigger. To reset. Food security, understanding self-about. I mean, do you trust TikTok after the ban? I didn't trust TikTok before the ban. I'm a former United States intelligence officer. Nothing is safe. I think all of the changes are in y'all's heads. What changed is the elites showed us they could turn it off. Everything I've heard people saying is a new change, I was already dealing with before as a creator on this platform every day. I've not heard one valid thing that has supposedly changed. What changed is all the sociological things that happened.
The forced followings are true. I double checked my platforms. I was following the Vance.
The unfollowing people seems to be a thing, but
yeah.
also, and that one's just hard for me to comment on because they've gained 100,000 followers since the shutdown. But I've definitely had a lot of people being like, I was following you before and not now.
I thought it was a forced following also. I had never followed them before. I had to unfollow and block.
Oh. No, I don't think Meta has control of it now. I don't think y'all understand how hard it is to keep large secrets. One of the best things I've ever heard about conspiracy theories is real conspiracies happen. That's what conspiracy theorists count on. They're very small. Like when people were saying COVID was an international conspiracy, like, wow, you've never even played broken telephone. No, Mark Zuckerberg did not secretly, quietly acquire TikTok while it was down for 17 hours. Like, that's conspiracy land. Let's come back to reality. What the actual changes are. The changes, we now know they can do it. I did change outfits. All right. My prediction of how the Trump cult ends is nobody knows how to predict a cult. Like, but by definition, cult leaders are volatile and unpredictable, which is why I say I will be here to narrate. And I, in addition to being a cult scholar, I have a lot of military knowledge, but these are the 2 things I can bring. I can't come for y'all about the police or anything else. No one knows how to stop cults. No one knows how to stop cults, how to get adults out, or how to break down cults. Like if we did, cults wouldn't be a thing anymore. The criminals are always one step ahead of the security professionals. The people who want to be bad and break the world are always one step ahead of the people that want the world to be nice, which is why we're always going to come back to fighting fascism. When you're in a cult, you can't leave, you survive, and you resist. And then I will add, you figure out how much risk you're at, and then you use that to help people that are at more risk. Because especially with fascism, it depends on accepting a hierarchy. It depends on you deciding that your life and your children and your home is worth more than those people you are hiding. And if we don't do that, they cannot control us. And on that, I bid you all farewell. Till tomorrow.